to the BAM Pod. All right, everybody. This is the BAM Pod. I'm your host, Big Ed, and on the line today, I have got the second half of our Swimbait trip. You know, we've been kind of talking about that with Josh Paris, and now I went out. I got Cameron Smith, and this is very interesting because Cameron comes from a West Coast base, so he has a really good idea about swimbaits and how we throw them out here. And today we're going to talk a little bit about swimbaits and how to apply them in tournament fishing. And now that he's fishing out east, it's going to be a nice little, a little trip down the line here to see how he does that and applies it and how it works out, compared to west and east, because I know the lakes are different. So, Cameron, welcome into the show, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I called back east and I was talking to some friends of mine back there, and I said, hey, I need a swimbait guy that is, good at it. You're a heck of an angler is what everybody tells me back there. You came from the West Coast. You're back east now doing that. You've been fishing the Bassmaster circuit when it was out here. You're fishing it back there. And now this year you're talking about, just maybe taking off for a year and doing a little local stuff out there a little bit. But one of the things that I really find interesting, and when I started this series, and I know it's going to be a short series, but this series on swimbait fishing, it's wintertime, and this is when everybody kind of starts thinking about swimbait fishing. This is when they want to try it. But back east, compared to out west, is it a whole lot different at all, or is it all just kind of like, a bass is a bass, and the way you throw it is no different? Tell a new fish story with Garmin EchoMap Ultra 2 chart plotters in 10 and 12-inch models, featuring traditional clear view, side view sonar. Heard about Garmin's live scope, live scanning sonar? EchoMap Ultra 2 is compatible with that also. You can even capture your favorite and best fish catches with the new screen recording feature. What more could you want? How about built-in Garmin Navionics, inland and coastal mapping? Wireless networking? Check and check. EchoMap Ultra 2. Check it out at Garmin.com. or shop your local Garmin dealer.
So there's a ton of similarities, but there's also some differences. In particular, like where I was from originally down in San Diego and fishing the San Diego lakes and the Southern California lakes with a lot of the trout stocks that used to happen, back in those days. And so there was a couple patterns that were, tournament oriented, based off of the trout stockings and the way that the trout would act once they got stocked, and how the bass would chase them down, pretty much like great white sharks that chase down seals. And so that approach was basically taking, back then it was a lot of soft baits like the osprey line throughs and a bait called the eagle. And we're going back to like 2001, 2002, that time frame. So basically, growing up fishing these lakes as a little kid with my dad and going through, I had seen on several occasions, you see the trout literally skipping across the surface and jumping out, and like on the third or fourth leap, you see a big boil, and then that trout's gone. Giant bass just ate that thing.
Wow.
So it kind of clicked one day when I was fishing down there. I had experimented with swim baits and stuff, but it kind of clicked one day. I was like, I think I can get a good majority of these good quality tournament fish, not necessarily your double digit 15-pound bass, but the 5 to 8, and occasionally up to 9, 10 pounds maybe. But, that really the kicker fish that you need in your limit for a tournament. And it just kind of dawned on me one day, let's try to imitate those skipping trout and see if there's a way to get the fish to react, more of a reaction bite versus I'm going to, just wait for you to swim by and suck you in because I'm a big fat lazy fish. But is like the ones that were active, and so I got a hold of a couple of those eagles and ospreys and went down to one of the lakes in San Diego, San Vicente, and literally just started paralleling the shore with them. And you'd make a long cast and just burn that thing back to the boat as fast as you can bring it across the surface without it really blowing out. But you'd want to make it blow out every once in a while. But you know what I'm saying? Like you're just bringing it so the tail is just making a wake and the head is just pushing and it's coming across. And it took all of about 10 minutes to get the first one to come up and just smash on it. And I remember so vividly the way that looked, and the fish didn't get hooked, but I just remember seeing like kind of the side of the body and the tail come flipping out, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that was like a walking topwater bait bite on steroids, you know. So I just kept running with it, and it came together very very fast, and it was like, I think that first day I had 6 or 7 fish in the boat that I caught, and probably,
Wow.
I don't know, I wasn't weighing fish back then, but it was probably close to a 30-pound bag, and missed a few other bites, and it just was like, oh my gosh, this is something that I don't think I have ever really heard about guys doing in tournaments. The guys that are fishing the big swim baits are out there, throwing them out a lot deeper and kind of slowly cranking them across the bottom or mid water, or next to like standing timber and stuff like that. And they were catching some really big fish, but you never really heard about a tournament approach to it. So I guess just over the years, down there in San Diego Lake, like it was just all about finding, where the trout kind of ran once they got stalked, because they seemed like they would go into certain areas, and they would always run back and forth down the banks. You'd see 2, 3, 4 in a pack, kind of just running up and down. The other key to that was the size of the trout that they stocked in those lakes. They stocked a lot of those 6 to like 12-inch long trout. So out here, they stock 14 to 17-inch trout. It's a little different story, but we'll
Holy
get into that
moly.
later.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so I don't know, it just kind of all came together. And then, as far as I kind of expanded on it with other wake baits, like the MS Slammer. It was definitely the beginning of it, and then it kind of turned into a couple other wake baits as people started trying to, I guess you could say, create a better mousetrap, back then.
Right.
It was kind of the evolution of that sort of thing, and it was cool to be in sort of at the beginning. Definitely guys were in it before I was, because I had some mentors myself. But um, yeah, and so the biggest part about doing that in a tournament, and back in those days, it was mostly the team tournaments. So you'd be
Right.
fishing whatever. We used to draw 50, 60, 70 boats for tournaments back then, because there was only
Wow.
just a couple circuits in San Diego. So
Right.
everybody could fish, everything. And the key was having a partner that didn't want to try to be the hero. So you had one guy that was committed to chucking baits and covering water and trying to get 1 or 2 big bites, because when you have 50, 60 boats running around a 2,000 surface acre lake, the fish, they act a little different than they do, say, on a Wednesday.
Right.
so, so you had to have the mentality to go after those 2 bites, but you had to have someone in the back of your boat that you knew could do what needed to be done. And that was generally catch 2 or 3 fish somehow along the way, fishing at a high rate of speed, going down the bank and just covering water. So I had a couple really great partners in San Diego that were very good at adapting to what I was doing when I was chasing the bigger fish. And, if I was able to put 1 or 2 in the boat doing that, it was pretty much like an automatic win, because
Wow.
I knew the other guys could catch those 3 or 4 fish that we needed. Um, and then another very critical part of the recipe, I call it, is having those couple key spots where if you're not getting them on the swim bait, you can go pull up on a specific rock or something and literally make 1, maybe 2 casts and put a fish in the boat. And it's just 1 fish, and you just know he just lives there. That's his house. And you just go and you catch him and you put him in the boat, and then you can carry on down the bank again, because you put one in the well, it kind of calms you down a little bit.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that was kind of a real fast run through, but that was basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
And then
And
I can kind of go
well,
into more detail.
well, you talked about that out, and that's San Diego, and that's, it's such a different thing. Now, you're in Massachusetts now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, what I'm kind of like to know is, So you're out there, and they're like you said, they're stocking a little bit bigger fish out in Massachusetts, obviously, because I think they're more of a put and take, and it's kind of a trout ish deal out there. Where here they're putting them in, and it's deep water, and they're hoping they come back, a couple years in a row, or 3 or 4
Right.
years in a row. Where out there, I feel like those lakes are one. When I was out there, I noticed that they're one a lot shallower than what we have out here for sure, and they're it's just smaller in general, right? I mean, it's not a they're not you're not fishing a bunch of really big lakes, or are there ones that I don't know about that you focus on when you are tournament fishing out there?
I mean, I'm just gonna say that they're all tiny. They're all
I
tiny
mean,
little puddles.
I mean, if you grew up fishing Shasta, you Oroville, things like that. I mean, every time I take my wife out, we go to Oroville, and it's like this thing is huge, compared to,
Yes.
we get up to Shasta, and it's like she's never even seen some of the arms. We've never been there. But when, she comes from ice fishing background out there in Massachusetts, where it's, I've been on those lakes now, and they're just tiny. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but I agree with you. I mean, they're just tiny lakes, and so it's got to be so different to try to focus, I guess, using big swim baits like that, especially in a tournament. Or is it because the lakes are so small that you can? Is it does it make it easier, I guess, to focus with swim baits back there, when the
It,
lakes are that small?
well, it's out here. It's very different because it's mostly weather driven, from what I've found out here.
Okay.
So you can get on a really good bite one day because the weather's doing a certain thing, and then the next day it's like it doesn't even exist. And so you can get fooled really easily and like chase something during the tournament, or sometimes there's like little 2 day events that they have around here or stuff like that. So you might crack them the first day, and then the second day you're like, wait, why am I not even getting a bite? um but the thing about the small lakes is you can get very, very, very familiar with them.
Okay.
So if you pay attention to every little rock you see, and every time you get a bite on certain rocks in certain areas and stuff like that, so you can become very efficient with how you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you know out here, my approach in the tournaments is not as much with a swim bait as it was when I fished in San Diego, and then even when I
Right.
ventured up to like Shasta and some of those places.
Mm-hmm.
But it still plays a big role. Um, it's just like I said, like the weather has to be somewhat cooperative, and it could be anything from just it could be a sunny day, but it could have a lot of wind, and the wind's got them fired up, and they're depending on the time of year, they're warming up in the sun, or they're looking for that the warm sun on their backs or whatever it is this time of year. Well, not this time of year, but coming up, they're going to be starting to pull up early spring and kind of like warm up their eggs a little bit, and
Yeah.
get ready to start doing their thing sometime around April. But so it definitely, you got to have that. The best time is when there's rain, when there's wind, when the last thing you want to do is be out on the lake because it's so miserable. That's the time you want to be out there throwing the swim baits out here.
Wow. Now,
It's
I
night and day.
I I definitely noticed. Now out here we have lakes like Clear Lake, and we have the Delta, obviously, very grass oriented. And I know that back east, when I've been back there, I've fished a few of those lakes. There is a lot of grass. I mean, those lakes are shallow, and they've got a lot of grass. Is that make I know because I know San Diego waters are not extremely grassy, and you're talking about big open water, lots of big rocks, lots of clear water. Um, does that, or did it make you really change the way you rig that bait, or the way you have to swim it through, or what is the new setup that you had to adapt to, or is there one?
We're going to take a short commercial break and talk to you about one of our great sponsors, StoreQuest Self Storage. They're here to help you get your garage back. As an outdoor enthusiast, you have gear, lots of expensive gear, equipment, boats, trailers, and vehicles, probably all stored in your garage. You need a storage space that's easy to access, secure, and climate controlled. And that's where StoreQuest comes in. head over to storequest.com. Plus, members receive an exclusive 10% discount with the offer code BAM10. That's BAM 10. StoreQuest is the official self-storage partner of the BAM Tournament Trail. Now, back to the BAM Pod.
Well, it definitely went, as far as the soft baits go, you definitely went with a lot more weedless baits. Just like the HUD 68 weedless, usually in a perch color back here, because perch is a big forage for them back here, as well as herring. Some of the lakes out here have the herring runs. So the herring will come in off the ocean, and they're just, it's like a feeding frenzy for like 2 weeks. And they move up the system. So some of these rivers and creeks that come in off the ocean, and the herring will migrate up in, and they'll go through one pond, and they'll go all the way up through the next one, and they go all the way to the end of the run, and that's usually where they spawn. So some of them can be 4, 5, 6, 7 ponds that they go up through, and they go up little herring runs, kind of like the fish ladders, like on the Columbia River and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The same concept. They have these little mini herring run, like fish ladders, that they can go from one elevation to another.
That's
and
interesting.
the bass just hang out in front, and they just wait for them to come up the ladder, and then they say, "Oh, I'm going to eat you."
That's a pretty interesting little concept there. I did not know that. That'd be very. Next time I'm back there, I'm gonna have to check that out and see if I can
very
find
cool.
some of that.
Like when you start, the winter turns into early spring, and then all of a sudden the ospreys come back.
Yeah.
And then certain places where there's herring run, you start seeing the ospreys hovering in the air. It's time, because they can see them. They see them in the little river down below, and they're just like, okay, all right. And then it's time. The bass know. The whole ecosystem knows. It's just wild how it happens that way. But I've definitely transitioned since I've moved out here. I've transitioned to fishing a lot. Like, I still fish the wake baits, like the rat. We definitely need to go into the rat a little bit later, because I have a good story about how the rat progressed.
It's your show, man. I mean, you feel like you want to tell that story, you tell that story. There are listeners right now going, okay, we need to hear that then.
Right. So anyways, back to around here. Like, I've basically transitioned a lot more into like the glide baits and stuff.
Okay.
I know that's the biggest craze now anyways in the swim bait world, but basically since I moved here, I kind of realized right off the bat that the bass don't really chase the trout around. They will chase the herring around, but the herring act a little different. Sometimes they'll get up in the very extreme shallow water, like when they're kind of spawning or they're kind of running, but the bass don't seem to really chase them up there. The bass kind of wait in ambush points. They kind of wait out in the ambush points and, wait for their meal to come to them. So I kind of instantly was like, all right, I need to keep something that's above the grass, but below the surface. So generally in these lakes, you might have like a 2-foot zone. The grass might grow up to about 2 feet below the surface.
Yeah.
So, I've been going a lot with the depth 250. That's like my favorite bait to fish. I know there's tons of glide baits out there. I just know that one works, and I just stay with that one. I don't need to go out and spend thousands of dollars on all these different glide baits, because I just have that. I have that one in a few different colors to match different forage, and I just roll with that. Keep it simple. So that's been my main go-to out here. And like, I've pretty much put a fish in the boat. I haven't been able to do it 12 months in a row, but I've pretty much caught at least one fish in all 12 months of the year. That even includes January and February out here in Massachusetts in like 35-degree water, and I can still get them to bite the glide once in a while when the weather's right.
Is that when you're just
it always
now
goes back to the weather?
I was going to say, is that when in January and February in Massachusetts? So do you have to go out and drill a bunch of holes and then skip that bait into those holes and jig it? What? I've been there, man. In January, February, you ain't getting in most of these lakes. So there must be some that are bigger than others.
So right now, this particular year, you would have to do that. Everything around in the state is frozen. Yeah. But I've lived here for 13 years now, and this is only the third year where it looks like we're going to have like a month or two off from fishing. Other than that, I've always been able to find a place to put the
Wow.
boat on the water. And I have a very special spot right by my house that actually has like a spring that comes in under the water.
Mm-hmm.
So you can launch the boat in 35-degree water. You can break ice to get up to a certain point, and then you pull into this little cut, and the water's like 43, 44 degrees.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of a special little area. But
And he's not sharing that one, even with West Coast guys. Uh,
everybody, it's like one of the most popular places to fish out here, and they've destroyed it with weed kill.
oh,
The
really?
Lake Association has literally destroyed it in the last like 8 years. They've eliminated almost all the grass, and the fishing, the ecosystem, and everything is just on a serious decline. It's sad.
Yeah, it's
But
amazing. It's amazing how they come in and they think, "Oh, grass is bad. It gets in my props. I can't swim in it or whatever." And it's just they just destroy lakes and fisheries, and they don't really care. I get it.
right, right. They don't see the life that lives under the water. They just see the weeds on the surface, and they just want them gone.
Right.
So, but but yeah, as far as like the tournament fishing with the swim baits out here,
Yeah.
it's definitely the same approach as far as, if you're fishing a team event,
Mhm.
one guy's got to have it locked into his hand, really like 6 of the 8 hours, maybe 7 of the 8 hours to try to
Wow.
put those three solid bites in the boat. Um, but if I know that it's going to be a bright sunny day with just a little bit of wind and not much clouds, I'm probably not even going to bring a swim bait, to be honest. So that's what I mean about it being so
Yeah.
weather driven. When you're fishing by yourself, like just single, like I fish a lot of the
Right.
team tournaments out here, I just fish them by myself. And
Okay.
you definitely have to have that familiarity, like I talked about before, where you have 5, 6, 7 spots that you're 75% chance you're going to get one every time you go there. So you just have you have like those spots that you can spend very little time fishing to put the fish you need in the boat. And they're not the winning fish. They're just fish to have in the boat. You're trying to catch the winning fish on your swim bait. So it's just part of the recipe, and you just have to have that, because if you lock it in your hand for 8 hours, you're not going to win. I've tried it. It's worked maybe 2 or 3 times out of 50.
Yeah, and
You
that's
know,
you said that, and it's actually somewhere I was going to go with that is when you are doing this and you're on a short window. 8 hours seems like a lot of time, but when you're in a tournament, if you're fishing tournaments, 8 hours goes by really really quick. How much time do you give to something like that? I mean, if you're now, I know you said if you're fishing a team tournament, you got one guy that's what he's doing for 7 hours. But if you're talking to the average Joe going out there and it's like, you know what, I should throw a swim bait. How long would you recommend someone really gives time to it to give it, I guess, the proper time to say, hey, you can't just throw it twice and think it's going to work. How much time would you give it?
right. So, I mean, personally, if I have any thought that they could bite it that day, I always start with it. It's
Okay.
always my first cast is a swim bait, and I always roll with it for an hour or two and let the fish tell me if I need to keep it in my hand or not. So there was a long time ago, Gary Dobbins wrote an article called Fish and Chicken,
Okay.
and it was all about trying to get your limit first before you go for the big one and missing out on that key bite window first thing in the morning where a lot of the biggest ones are caught. So, fish and chicken means go for your 5 first and then try to upgrade, which is the common theme. But
Okay.
the whole core of that article was, and obviously Gary Dobbins has had a ton of success on the West Coast in fishing, like probably the most successful guy out there. So he always had that mentality where you go for the big ones first and you spend a couple hours. It wasn't necessarily swim bait fishing, but
Right.
it was the same concept. So I will always start with it first, and I'll let the fish tell me. And usually in that first hour or two, you either have you've got one in the boat, you've had a bite, or if the water's clear enough, you see them following it.
Okay.
And if you go for an hour or two and you don't have any of those signs, then it's time to fall back, fish a couple of your other spots, put a couple fish in the boat, and see if the conditions change at all. That could be the wind picked up, or the clouds moved in, or anything changing that's different throughout the day can trigger them to bite. So if you start sensing a change, then pick it up again, give it another 15, 20 minutes to an hour, look for those signs again. And if you're not getting any, then you go back to your spots and you put another couple fish in the boat. If you get those signs first thing in the morning, keep rolling with it. Keep rolling with it until they stop talking to you. Once they stop talking to you, then you're like, okay, I need to go somewhere else. I need to go over here and pick these apart. And then maybe I'll come back to it the last hour, depending on, what I've got in the well at that point in time.
All right, so, man. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me when tournament fishing is such a different, it's such a different type of fishing rather than just going out and looking for that big fish. Like, when you're trophy fishing, that's one thing. When you're tournament fishing, you've got that window, and that the way you just said that, and it makes sense that and to hear, and I know Gary Dobbins has always had success out here, and he's had success pretty much everywhere he's gone, but to go out there and catch those fish like that, like you said, go out there, try it, and make those adjustments kind of on the fly. I mean, that's tournament fishing in general, right? I mean, that's how you go out with anything you're throwing.
Yep. It's not really a secret that specifically applies to swim baits. It's more of a mentality, right? Like, most of the people are afraid to throw something like that first thing in the morning because they don't think they really have a good shot at catching one on it, period. So they want to make sure they have their fish in the bag. And then they think, okay, well, now I'm going to throw this because if I do get bit, it's probably going to be a big one. I can't even tell you how many fish I've caught on, 9, 10, 12-inch baits that are under 3 pounds. Like, it's not always a big fish bait. Like, sometimes you're going to get on a bite where the 1.5 pound fish are smashing it.
Right.
And you're also getting some 4 and 5 pounders as well, so it's not always a big fish thing, but for the most part, it's that first hour or two, and then the last hour of the day are usually when, personally, I do the most damage on baits like that. Okay.
I mean, that's when you say towards the end of the day, are you talking about like the tournament day, or are you talking about just the day in general? Like, you're looking for that low light. Is it a low light condition that you're looking for, or is it just?
No, I meant the afternoon weigh-in, like the last hour before weigh-in. So generally 2 to 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Because
that's something that I think is really interesting, because I don't think a lot of people really think you can fish swim baits throughout the entire day. I mean, it's kind of like, oh yeah, first thing in the morning, or like you say, more towards the evening, or and more towards the evening, I think is by. But to think about throwing a big bait like that in the middle of the day is kind of something I think maybe people wouldn't have thought of, and it sounds to me like you've had some good success like that.
Yeah, I mean, generally throughout the course of the day, the weather's going to change. Like on your average fishing day, the morning's going to start out pretty calm, and then the wind's going to pick up towards the afternoon, and it's going to blow, and it's going to steadily pick up until that 2 or 3 o'clock range, and then it's going to start to die down as it gets towards the evening. So I feel like the wind usually ramps a few fish up, gets them a little excited, towards that period of time. And I mean, it could be better from 3 to 4. It's just generally, like I said, you weigh in at 3 for the most part in most tournaments, or at least that's when the first flight starts coming in. So,
okay.
That afternoon bite of a tournament day is usually pretty key for me as well. I've caught a lot of fish during that time. And then, like I said just a little bit ago, if there's changes throughout the day, it could be 10 o'clock in the morning, the bite kicks off.
Okay.
So the weather is something to really pay attention, and like the guys that spend their time on the lake and spend a lot of time on the water, they feel it. Like, it's just a feeling you get after a while. You just know, like, okay, things are changing around me right now, and the fish can feel that as well, even though they're in the water.
Right.
It's the moment. when everything is on the line and precision, power, and control make all the difference. A moment over 20 years in the making, anchored on loyalty, trust, and support that goes beyond all expectations. A relentless pursuit of perfection. All born from a revolutionary idea to help you rule the water. Power Pole.
All right. Well, I have when I talked to Josh, when I did the interview with him, he was kind of geeked up on wanting to hear a couple things. So I thought I'll ask you these questions. And he goes, he spends a lot of time, like gets his baits, and he takes them out of the package, and he's like, man, I've even ruined them, taking them out of the package, and I cut the belly open, shave this off, add a weight here, do this kind of thing. Are there any major adaptations you make to a bait when you get it right out of the package, or are you just one of those guys that's like, nope, these are perfect, I'm throwing them?
So which version of me? Because in those early years of, from like 2000 on to like say 2010, those first 10 years,
yeah,
I was always messing with stuff. Always. Like he said, I've even ruined some baits. I've probably ruined more baits than are in most people's swim bait collections. Like it's ridiculous, the things I used to do. I used to put stalker trout wings into the hard head stake baits, take the bill out, weigh them down, and make a crazy looking stalker trout that would skip across the surface.
Wow.
Like burn it. Like I was always trying to create a better mouse trap, and sometimes it worked. Most of the time it didn't. Fast forward to the second 10 years, I buy what I like, I take it out of the package, and I fish it. I don't even change the hooks. I don't mess around with anything.
Really?
Like, yep. It's that simple. Like I don't mess around with braid to fluoro leader. I don't mess around with any of that kind of stuff. I throw straight 20 to 25 pound mono with the bait as it comes out of the package and just run with it. I just figure in today's world, it's pretty hard to find bad components. Like people have upped their game and they make good hooks and they make good rings. And if the bait maker makes a bait with said hooks on them, then that bait was designed around those hooks. And so I just keep them on there. Maybe through the course of fishing, I might notice something different and make a few small little modifications, but generally not. Generally, I just go with it. I've transformed into like just keeping it as simple as you possibly can, because I've realized over the years that that's what works. You don't have to try to outsmart the system. The basic system works just as good as the most complicated system you can come up with. It's all whose hands it's in. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
The person that can read the water and can read the conditions and can go out there and throw the bait in the right spot. And I'm a firm believer that if a fish eats bait A, it would also eat B, C, D, E, and F in the same spot.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I mean, I get that. I think we do that with just about any bait too, but to really think about that, like I said, Josh was talking about, all the different things, hey, if you want it to be a faster fall, if you need this, if you need that, and I think that's pretty much what you were saying. If during the day you're like, you know what, they're really reacting if that thing's moving a little quicker, or if it's falling a little faster, or if they're doing, you kind of notice and maybe make some alterations when the fish are telling you, hey, we like this, but it needs to be this way. We were just talking just a little bit before the show, and the gentleman that just won our Shasta opener up there on the BAM Trail, Alex. I always get his name wrong, but it's Niapis, and he was telling me that same thing. He's got a new protocol. One of his sponsors has a new prototype bait coming out, and it's kind of weedless, and the hooks are not there. And he goes, I never noticed, or they never really the bait manufacturer noticed that fish were not eating it if the hooks were exposed as well as they were if they weren't. And that's one of those things that, I think when back in the day, like 20 years ago, when this thing kind of all kicked off with big baits, probably 25 years now at this point. But they had hooks hanging off of everything so that if a fish hit it, it was, oh, you want to run this line back here and have a stinger hook here and a stinger hook there and a stinger hook there and this one there. They look like porcupines. I mean, is that something that have you noticed over time now that, I mean, they're not building them like they did like that. Is it more of a thing now where, yeah, not having hooks hanging out is a better way to fish it?
So I think that all depends on how you're fishing them, right?
Okay.
So like back then when we were burning the baits across the surface, like I'm talking about my friend Matt Peters, who did the Southern Trout Eater Swimbait DVD.
Okay.
I don't know, he released it maybe like, gosh, it's been probably 15 years almost now, but anyways, him and I kind of grew up together, fishing together, and we started fishing the Eagle, and it was just that single line through treble, and we were missing so many fish because we were fishing it so fast, and the fish just weren't getting the whole thing in their mouth or whatever. So then we started adding the stinger hook, and then our hookup ratio went up a little bit more, and then we were like, okay, well, how can we get this better, because we're still missing fish? So then we started thinking about the crankbaits and the top water and everything that have like the hanging trebles, where all three points are exposed. So then we started coming up with the harnesses and like the paper clips and stuff like that to put the harnesses up in the baits so that you could have two trebles that were hanging down. And that was really key in getting better hookup ratios when you're fishing them really fast across the surface. But you wouldn't necessarily want to cast that thing out, let it sink down 10 feet and reel it really slow and let the fish get a really good look at it. So, the better the fish can see the bait, I think the more natural it needs to look. So if you're fishing it really slow and really clear water, having the hidden trebles or having like the Butch Brown rig with just the one treble on the head, knowing that those big fish are just going to eat it head first anyways. So, you don't need a bunch hanging off the tails and stuff like that. So it's really specific to how you're fishing the particular bait that you're fishing.
Right.
Sometimes it might be more effective with just that single treble that's buried up in there. And other times the way you're fishing it, that might not work because you might be missing 90% of your bites.
All right. You mentioned that you fish a lot of glide baits now. It's kind of the way that the market's gone, and there's a lot more. I feel like I agree with you that there's a lot more glide baits on the market now than there have been in any time. Is there anything that a special way you fish them? Do I've watched and talked to a few guys that are really heavy into, tactical bassin guys and the way they fish the S-Waver or the way they fish this one or that one, the proper twitching, is there anything, if you're talking to someone and say, hey, you know what, take it out of the package, throw it out there and like just wind it back? Or is there some specific way that people should really try to fish those, baits? Impart a lot of action, not a lot of action, or is it just a matter of let the fish tell you?
Well, I think a lot of it is letting the fish tell you. A lot of it is where you're fishing, like, and the time of year you're fishing, So around here, I'll throw the depths 250. I'll throw it 12 months a year if we can get on the water, if it's not frozen. So obviously, as the water's colder, I'm trying to fish that thing as slow and natural as possible, and I'll let it glide out to the side and almost stall out and start to sink a little bit, and then I'll bring it back to the other direction. And when I do that, I'm using the reel, but I'm also using the rod tip, and the rod tip kind of loads up just a little bit, and then it pops that bait. And I feel like I get an extra few inches on my glide if I'm using the rod and the reel versus just using the reel. So it's very slow and natural. As the water warms up, I'll speed things up a little bit, give it a few rapid glides, like boom, 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 and then let it stall out to the side and come back, and then a couple more rapid ones. If you see a fish following it and you have enough distance between the boat and the fish, you can give it 4 or 5 real fast cranks and then let it dart off to the side. A lot of times the fish will attack it like that. It's very much depending on the water temperature and how the fish are acting. If they're really active that day, you can obviously fish it a lot faster. Most of the time, I'm just fishing it very slow and natural. I know a lot of guys talk about glide baits that chop and do that kind of stuff, and I think that's probably really good for like a reaction bite. You might be able to get some to react to it. When I'm fishing the big depths 250, I just can't picture that thing like a fish chopping, as they say, through the water.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense in my brain. So I've always tried to like, whatever I'm fishing, whether it's a swim bait or something else, I'm always trying to get inside of the brain of what I'm trying to mimic, if that makes sense. So if I'm trying to imitate a trout, like what is that trout thinking? How is that trout going to be swimming along? And if I'm fishing something like a jig or something, it's like, well, what do crawdads do when they're in the rocks? How do they act when they get scared? Stuff like that. So glide baits, I don't really see a lot of fish. When you're looking in the water and you see fish, you don't really see them going really fast, just like people say, chopping, whatever, whatever that means anyway. It's more like if they are even going side to side at all, it's more of a very slow, natural kind of sway through the water. So I'm generally trying to imitate that. And then obviously we have a lot of docks on the lakes here, a lot of shallow docks. So, paralleling to the end of the docks and then paralleling down and getting the glide so that the bait like disappears under the dock and then comes back out and then disappears under and comes back out. Get it out to that last post and kind of stall it around the post and kind of just let it sit there and sink down a little bit and see if something will come out and look at it.
Yeah, that would be a very good technique out here on like Clear Lake and things like that. I could see that there, a lake out here that we have that has a lot of docks. Obviously, not quite as many as back there. I was very impressed at how when you get back there, you can definitely fish docks back there. That's for sure.
Yep.
It's a true pattern. I see that. Cameron, God, it's so much knowledge right there. I mean, thank you for, giving us that much knowledge. It's great. We basically, at this point in the show, it's kind of like we're running out of time a little bit here, but I like to give you guys, give you as the angler a little bit of time to, you dropped a bunch of knowledge on everybody. You've just been talking about how to kind of approach it during, tournaments, and how swim baits work for tournaments and how, because Josh is a guy who's more well known for being a trophy angler. Like he's going out there looking for big fish, he's 14, 15, 16 pounders, which I don't think there's a lot of those back east. Like you're talking about, let me ask that before I let you get onto this part, but is that one of the big changes that you had when you came from the West and now you're back East? Is the overall size of fish? Are you gearing up and trying to get those 7-pounders, or are they just not there? Like there's just not a lot of big fish in these waters.
There's a lot of, I don't want to say there's a lot in comparison to California.
Right.
But there's a good amount of 6, 7, and then maybe 8-pounders around here.
Okay.
There's a big swim bait scene in New England, Massachusetts in particular. They're not tournament guys. There are a lot of the guys that fish at night. They'll do this online swim bait tournaments and stuff like that. But there's a huge swim bait scene out here. So, every once in a while you'll see a guy post up a picture with a fish on the scale and it's an 8-pounder, and you're just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good fish. My personal best out here is like somewhere between 8 and 8.5. We didn't weigh it. There was 3 of us that looked at it. We all came to the conclusion that it was between 8 and 8.5. I've put some 7-pounders on scales out here, all on the swim bait, but I haven't caught one over 6 in like 3 years now.
Wow.
So
okay.
I didn't spend any time last year trying for a bigger fish. It was all tournaments last year. It was all I fished. I didn't even fish one day for fun. It was straight tournaments every time. Tournament. But in the past, I've tried to find those magical weather windows where the barometer is dropping. It seems to be like early spring in the wintertime when the fish are the fattest. They're bulking up. They fed up all fall, and now they're putting on weight. They're putting on their eggs. They're starting to develop, and they're starting to gain a little more weight towards the spring. And it's a cold water deal, but when you can get the conditions where the barometer's dropping rapidly because of a storm that's coming up from the south, so you've got warmer air than what normally happens. It brings a little bit of rain, and then the barometer's dropping, and that was generally my time. If I could get on the water during a specific time during that weather event that was going on, it was almost a guarantee that I was going to get like a 5 or 6 pounder.
Nice.
But when you're working, kind of hard to hit those windows so it only happens just a few times a year.
Yeah.
At Ford Fairfield, we'll make your ownership experience simple. Our simple price, simple process is designed to save you time by eliminating the back and forth. That means you'll always get our very best highly competitive offer right up front. No games, no gimmicks. Our goal? To provide you with an exceptional experience. Stop by or book your appointment today. Ford Fairfield, simple price, simple process.
But as far as like gearing up for the big fish, I mean, we don't have them. A 10 pounder is a freak. Once every 2 or 3 years, someone weighs a 10 pounder. Our state record is actually 15.5 pounds, which is unbelievable. There's a ton of people that don't think it's legit, but all the old school guys that were around in the 80s that fish for bass in the 80s and stuff, they say it's legit. So I'm going to root that it was legit because I have seen that particular body of water that it came out of, and the amount of forage that exists in that. It's got a herring run. It's got the biggest herring run in the state that flows into it. So it's just like, and it's got a ton of perch, and it's got pickerel, baby pickerel. It's got crappie, everything the fish could eat. It's just to just sit in there and choke them down. And back then in the 80s, there was hardly any fishing pressure around here. So
wow.
I do believe that a fish could have grown that big. A freak of nature, kind of like Dottie in Southern California, is a freak of nature. But I do believe it's possible because there has been like a 12 weighed out here before, an 11. So they do get close. But
wow.
I was shocked at how many, say, 3 to 5 pound fish are out here. There's a ton. So like coming from San Diego and having the winning weights of a lot of tournaments be 17 to 19 pounds.
Wow.
Sometimes they'll crack big bags, but for the most part, 16, 17, 19 pounds wins tournaments. And then I move out here and it's like, I think the first tournament I fished, I weighed 19 pounds. And it's like, okay, the tournament weights aren't much different.
Wow. Okay.
So I was kind of impressed with that, which is why also I can, put a swim bait in my hand for 6 or 7 hours because I know the 3, 4, and 5 pound fish are going to eat it. It's not just a 7 to 12 pound, and beyond.
Right. Huh. Well, this is one of the reasons why I take notes as I go, because there's one thing that I think we kind of glassed over, and I don't think anybody would let me get away with it if I didn't go, you told us you had a rat story. And I let it go. So we got some time. Let's hear this. I want to hear this story. I want to hear this story about this this bait, man.
So the rat, I think it was like 2002 or 2003. I was working with Mickey Ellis at 316 Lures.
Okay.
And he got a hold of a wooden Rego rat, one of Jerry Rego's first little wooden rats that he made. And there was very few. I think there was like 3 or 4 people that even had one at the time. And I was catching fish down in San Diego. I was on a roll with wake baits with the MS Slammer. Basically at that point in time, I kind of was going off from burning the baits across the surface and switching over to wake baits and trying to figure out which one I liked best because they were eating both. And he gave me this little wooden rat. He said, "Hey, you need to go down. You need to throw this thing. It wakes good across the surface. You should see if it works, whatever." So I took it down to the lake. I think it was Lake Otay. And it was like fish were swimming from, I don't even know how far away to eat the thing. It was ridiculous how they wanted that bait. They wanted it so bad. So I'm going to make this kind of short because it could get very, very long. But like, anyways, went on a little bit. I think I won like 4 or 5 tournaments in a row fishing the San Diego lakes. on that wooden rat. And those lakes are so small that everybody, well, not everybody, but people see what you're throwing. You can't hide what you're throwing. Everybody sees you fishing throughout the course of the day. And so people started to realize that I was throwing this little wooden rat, this little wake bait. I say wooden, they didn't know it was wood. So things started to blow up with this rat and myself in the tournaments, and the tackle stores in San Diego started calling Jerry Rago, asking him for his rat and how they could sell his rat. So he started making and mass producing the resin ones. They weren't wood. So the resin ones had like half the buoyancy as the wooden ones. So you couldn't fish them on the surface as fast. You had to just do a real slow crawl or they would dive down. So I'm still throwing the rat. Now you've got another like 20 boats out there throwing the rat in the tournaments. And I'm kind of the only one still catching them. And like, we're talking like still, even though it had gone down the road, like maybe like 2 months now, I'm still putting limits in the boat on the rat. Like that wasn't like, you couldn't do that on the other swim baits during like a 30, 40, 50 boat team tournament. Like you wouldn't get enough bites, but they were choking down the rat. Like I'd call fish during the day.
Wow.
So people were like, what is going on? What is going on? So then one of the guys that I know in San Diego realized that I was throwing a wood one. And he was like, I have a lathe. I can make that. So he started making his own version of the wooden rat. And the spark was lit. And then it grew into a small little fire around San Diego. And you had guys like Matt that makes the Johnny Rat, and a couple other guys started coming around. My friend George started making the PB Rat. And the fire like just kind of grew, and then it spread a little bit, and then gosh, I can't think of his name right now. I'm so mad, but he was a San Diego guy, went to college back east and fished the college series for the schools, for the Bassmasters, and won the national championship on the rat. Wow. And that was like, boom, it exploded like nationwide. Just the fire just spread from all the way across the country, just smash. And it was pretty cool to think that like I kind of like struck the match, you know, and just like it just blew up the whole rat craze. And now you see like, I don't even know how many people are making rat baits now. There's probably 300, 400 different people making rat baits.
Definitely.
So it was really cool. But along those lines, I used to fish with George Pernicano, who makes the PB rat.
Okay.
And this was back when I just had the Rago rat, and we were fishing team tournaments, and we would talk about what made it work and what made it, you know, what the fish were really attracted to and what part of it was special. And so he kind of took off on a design and designed his own. And then he came to me like a couple months later. He's like, I got something for you. I'm like, what? He's like, here. And he kind of like, he had his hand behind his back, you know, the whole little secretive thing, whatever. He pulls it out and he hands it to me, and he's like, this one is special. And it was this 3-piece wooden PB rat. He's like, this one is special. He's like, I made this one for you. It's special. And I'm like, okay, what's special about it? He's like, it's special. He wouldn't even tell me. That's all he said. So long story short, I've won a truck, a boat, and probably a total of like, I don't know, $175,000 in cash and prizes on that one bait.
Wow.
And it's now like probably 15 years old, maybe 18 years old, that one bait.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's pretty incredible how like people consider me like, I guess it's like when I first came back here to Massachusetts and I fished a swim bait in the first couple of tournaments, everybody started knowing me as the swim bait guy. They didn't really know me as the rat guy. And then it was 2015 when I won a truck and a boat on the rat down at Lake Hartwell. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, now you're the rat guy. I'm like, well, I've always been the rat guy. That's just how it is. So that's my little story. There's a lot more details to it, but it was kind of cool. It's kind of cool to look back now and just think like, man, I was like, you know, I was in the right place at the right time, and kind of, like I said, struck that little match, and it just blew up. It blew up so fast.
That is awesome. That's a good story for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we've got just a few more minutes. Everybody, Cameron has just dropped a bunch of knowledge on you. Got some good stuff out there. How to kind of approach throwing swim baits in tournaments, how to throw swim baits in general, and this is the time of year when you're going to go out there and catch some really big fish on swim baits. So, Cameron, this is the time I turn it over to you and I go, let everybody know who you are, man. Give everybody some knowledge. They just heard you. They just heard all the knowledge and then they're like, why should I listen to this guy? So tell them why, man. Tell them who you are.
Oh, well, I'm nobody. In the grand scheme of things, I'm a nobody compared to the guys that are the big names, but grew up fishing out west. I'm nearing 50 years old now, so I've been around a little while. Grew up fishing with my dad on all the San Diego lakes, and we used to fish. I guess actually also grew up fishing with Don Iovino, like the godfather of finesse fishing. My dad bought one of his old Rangers in like 1980 or 81 or something, and I was like 5 years old. And so just kind of, my dad became friends with Don. I was there. Don has helped me tremendously through my somewhat career that I had. But anyways, started out with all the finesse stuff, doodling little 4-inch worms and 60 feet of water for spotted bass at Lake Paris and carrying that up to Orville and Shasta, up to that neck of the woods where you guys are at, and everything in between. And then I got exposed, actually fished with Dean Rojas, who was from San Diego. Him and I hooked up together, did some pro-ams together, got exposed to more of like the reaction bait stuff. Started to round out my fishing. It was like 1998 or 1999 when I first started throwing swim baits, which was like the AC plugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really give it much at all. I caught a couple fish on them. They weren't spectacular. I had a few follows. Didn't really do much at all with that until I got, like I said, like we started talking about earlier about the trout stocking, and that kind of just popped in my head one day and just magically transformed into something awesome. But tournament background, always fished the little stuff, the little tiny little, I don't even want to call them pro-ams, little draw tournaments in San Diego. Got into some team tournaments. Started fishing the Bassmaster Opens, the Western Opens in 2000, I think. Had a rough go the first couple tournaments, but ended up getting some pretty decent finishes. I think my best finish was 5th place at Shasta, which it was in 2005, and I caught all my fish that I weighed on a swim bait. It was actually a special made slammer, like a 6-inch slammer, and little light trout pattern slammer, and I was just paralleling it to the bridge pilings and the bluff walls and catching 3 and 4 and 5 pound spotted bass, and then occasionally getting some smaller ones to bite. And I had it's the old story that everybody tells. I had the winning fish right at the boat, and he pulled off the hook because I was kind of inexperienced at the time, and didn't give the fish enough, and he took off, and that fish would have given me a good couple pound cull, and I was less than 2 pounds away from winning that tournament. So did the Opens, went back to the championships with the Opens. I guess technically qualified for what is now the Elite Series, but it was back then it was like the top 150. But being a 20-year-old kid from Southern California, I really had no way of going. So always turned down the invite for that. And then Bassmasters pulled out. FLW brought their FLW series out west, which was a really good opportunity for the Western guys to actually make money fishing. You had to pony up. It was $4,000 to enter, but they were paying like 50th place paid $10,000, and we were only fishing against like 120 guys, 130 guys. So it was a really good way to make some money actually fishing out west. And did those for, I think 3 years is all they lasted. Maybe 4 years is all they kept that series out west. And right. I think I had like 3 top 10s or 2 top 10s or something like that. And, never really came close to winning any of those, but I did have a top 10 at Havasu on pretty much strictly a swim bait back then. I think it was like 2008 or 2009. And then in 2013, I moved to Massachusetts, left Southern California and moved to Massachusetts, and fell right into the fishing community out here. Started fishing with the circuit that I started fishing with when I was 15, which is used to be called MBAA, but now it's just the ABA. Not the ABA teams that you guys have out there, but it's like a national ABA circuit. It's like a draw circuit.
Okay.
Started fishing the local divisions around here. Won Angler of the Year. Went down to the championship at Lake Hartwell, and the championship was obviously the championship, fishing for first, but it was also kind of a tournament within the tournament where all the anglers of the years from each division across the country were competing to be the highest finishing angler of the year, and whoever took that title was the national angler of the year. So I ended up second place in the national championship and was the highest finishing angler of the year guy. So I ended up national angler of the year. And that was the event that I won the truck and the boat in on the PB Rat. Probably 75% of my fish were caught on the Rat in that tournament. So new truck, new boat, doors open. Let's try to chase down the Elite Series. And so I got into the opens out here, started fishing the opens out here, and made a couple top tens at the James River. One of them was on the back of a PB Rat, where I think like 12 of the 15 fish I weighed were caught on the Rat.
Wow.
So I've spread it out across the country with that thing. And let's see, I don't know, I fished probably 3 or 4 seasons where I fished them all.
Yeah.
Came really close to qualifying one year. I was in I think 9th place going into the last event, 9th place in points going into the last event. And I just needed to move up one spot. As it turned out, I just needed to move up one spot, but I absolutely choked. I choked harder than I think anybody could ever choke. I finished in like the 160th or something place in the tournament. And I dropped to like 16th in the points overall, but still not bad considering, the level that it's, that you're fishing at. Like it's a different world back here. You fish these opens and they fill up 225 boats, at least back then. This year, it doesn't look very promising for them. But when I was doing it just a few years ago, like you had to sign up within a minute of your window opening up or you were on the waiting list. And that was 225 confirmed in, and then however many people were on the waiting list.
Wow.
One year I missed it by just a little bit, and I ended up like 70 something on the waiting list after they already confirmed 225 people in. So there was over 300 people trying to get into those events, which is, it's just,
wow.
The field is just huge. So, you're fishing against so many more people, and then you look around and you're just like, oh geez, look at that. That's Roland Martin over there, and there's I'm not going to start throwing out names, but there's a ton of Elite Series guys, and there's a ton of FLW guys and MLF guys, and it's like, wow, you just kind of like sit back and go, I just swing a hammer 40 hours a week. I don't know if I should, I don't know. But it kind of like I gave it 3 or 4 strong years, and then I slowly started to accept the reality that I probably wasn't going to be able to qualify, and I should just start taking it a little less serious, I guess, and start enjoying the ride a little more. And then I just sort of faded out of them altogether when they changed the format. It's just impossible for me to fish the amount of tournaments I need to fish to be able to qualify. So I think from here on out, it's going to be like if an event comes up on a like the James River. I'm very fond of the James River out here. So if there's one that comes up there, I might jump in and fish it. Maybe something a little closer in New York, I might decide to fish St. Lawrence River, something like that. But I'm not going to chase the whole circuit around and spend all that money. It was fun while it lasted, but it's not something that I can do at this point in time. So,
well,
but that's me in a nutshell.
if Well, if people are out there and they want to look you up, they want to check you out, see what you have been doing, or see what you do in the future, how do they find you? You got any social media or anything that people can check you out with?
No. I literally just have my Facebook page and an Instagram page, but it's nothing set up towards fishing really. Um,
Okay.
like I said, I'm kind of done with the sponsored game and playing the whole, trying to be a professional bass fisherman thing.
Hey, there's nothing
So
wrong
I,
with that, man. You can go out there and still catch some good fish, have fun. I think most people out here in the country, anyways, that's what they're doing. And man, you still got so much knowledge. You've done it for so long, and it's a great deal. Right now, I just want to say thanks, man. Thanks for coming on and doing this, Cameron. That was some great information right there. If anybody out there didn't get any out of that, go listen to it again. You missed something because that was a bunch of information right there. That if you want to up that game, that swim bait game, Josh had a bunch of good stuff. Cameron's had a bunch of good stuff right here. Tune back into the show, listen to it again, figure out something you do, have some confidence now. If you do want to throw it during a tournament, Cameron just talked about, you can do it, and you just have to maybe. I guess what I got out of all that is that you know what, you either kind of go all in or go all out with it, and maybe make it first thing in the morning kind of deal, and then pay attention during the day. But yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely doable now, and so yeah, Cameron, thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
yeah, you got it, man. I appreciate you having me on. It's fun.
All right, everybody. That's the show. We will talk to you, and in a couple weeks after this one comes out, I might be doing a special one. So pay attention after this. This comes out this Wednesday. So pay attention because I do have the winners of the Shasta event. They're going to be coming on. We'll be doing that, and I'm trying to get it out before the One Bass event that's coming up. So, everybody, thanks for tuning into the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got a lot of knowledge. We'll see you in the next one.